Hello everybody and welcome to another video. For today's video we're going to be going all the way back to 1998, an absolute bumper year for the games industry. This is a year that gave us Metal Gear Solid, Half-Life, Resident Evil 2, Ocarina of Time, Thief and Grim Fandango to name but a few. It also gave us a game that we've covered on the channel already a couple of years ago called Panzer Dragoon Saga, and it is to the Sega Saturn that we're going to go to for this one as well. This is a quirky little third-person shooter called Burning Rangers. Now, 1998 was the year we were going to start to say goodbye to the Sega Saturn, as it would start to actually be discontinued in a number of territories, with Sega due to release the Dreamcast in 1999. The Saturn, whilst for me being quite an underrated system, it just hadn't managed to pull in the numbers for Sega, and it was a distant third to the PlayStation and the N64. Still, 1998 would see the Saturn release one of its best games, and a shout out for one of the best games of the year with the aforementioned Panzer Dragoon Saga, and of course we would see this one. Developed by Sonic Team, Burning Rangers sees you take on the role of Shu or Tillis, a new addition to an elite firefighting team known as the Burning Rangers. Yep, Burning Rangers is a third-person shooter where you are not fighting people, you are fighting fires. Now, as many of you probably know, the Saturn never actually got its own mainline Sonic title for various reasons, but this is not to say that the Blue Boy didn't appear on the system itself. It got a part of Sonic 3D Blast, it got Sonic Jam, which was a compilation of Mega Drive titles, and of course it got Sonic R. Sonic Team would release two original titles, Nights into Dreams and this one. The development of Burning Rangers started in December of 1996, and the desire here was to create a game in which you were rescuing people rather than killing them. It had been noted by the development team, including Yuji Naka, that many games at that time were about killing other people, so they wanted to do something different. So they decided on wanting to make a game where you save people, and they picked the theme of firefighting, because firefighters are a very easily relatable hero for people around the world. The game itself is set across 4 stages, with the basic premise being that you make your way through these stages, you're guided by an operator who tells you where to go, you put the fires out as you go, amass crystals and rescue those in need. There is a fantastic interview out there with the members of Sonic Team, which was done around the time the game came out. This was done by official Sega Saturn magazine, and it goes into the motivations of the team when they were making this game. It breaks down some of the gameplay systems and expands and talks more about the lore and story of the game. One of the neat things in it as well is a question about which aspect of the game each person being interviewed was most proud of. Miyoshi, the game's main planner, was most proud of this navigation system that they developed for it. It was one of the main selling points, really. I did mention earlier that an operator tells you where you need to go. Now, this was a massive system that they created, because you press a button on the controller and the operator would, through knowing where the player was in the level, guide them to where they should be going, and it was all fully voiced. The reason they developed this is because Sonic Team wanted to create these fairly big and expansive levels that players were able to explore, but they also wanted to avoid the player getting stuck or lost for too long should they stray from the main path. Now, as you might expect, there was some anticipation for this title, despite it being pretty much known that this was the latter days of the Saturn's lifespan. But this was a new game from Sonic Team, so of course it was going to get attention. Did it do well with the critics? Well, Game Rankings has it at an overall of 75%. There is no entry on Metacritic for it. A listing of the review scores actually does tell an interesting story though, because the majority of the scores are actually fairly high, 8s, 9s, out of 10s, that kind of thing. There's one outlier, and that is GameSpot with a 6.2 out of 10. Critics praised the game, citing the guidance system as being very good. They enjoyed the general gameplay and the graphics, which at the time did push the Saturn to its limits. It did come under fire though for a few things: its collision detection, some glitchiness, the really short length of it, and some of the script work and voice acting in there. Now, we come to the more unfortunate side of things, really. I've referenced a few times this came out the latter part of the Saturn's lifespan, so Sega were winding down support for the Saturn. No matter how good the games were, which unfortunately we already know about one of these games I mentioned before and how much that one sells for, Burning Rangers is no real different here. It doesn't go for as much as Panzer Dragoon does, but due to not a very high circulation of the game, due to not as much press, didn't do quite as well as deserved maybe. Copies of it have become rare and desirable. A legit copy of it was going for about 200 to 250 when I last checked on eBay. It is a game that has intrigued me for a little while. I played it briefly a couple of years ago and the concept stuck with me. So because of that, and because it is one that I've seen frequently listed in, like, you know, top 10 Saturn games, and I'm always a fan of unique concept, really wanted to give this one a go. So let's see how it plays. Our game begins with an absolute banger of an opening theme. It's so much animated, 90s animated brilliance in there, and we get ourselves into the game itself. I pick Tillis, and we get a nice little opening tutorial. This is a really good tutorial, actually. It introduces us not only to the characters that make up the Burning Rangers, but also every aspect of the game that you will make use of throughout its 4 stages. It tells you how to move, it tells you how to use the navigation system, it tells you how to double jump, and most importantly, it tells you how to fight the fires that you'll be coming across and the different types of fire. All the while, the game looks really, really good for the time it was released in. The 3D models are lovely, they're quite advanced for what I would expect from 1998. The environments are really good here as well. Control-wise, it's a little bit hard to say during the tutorial itself, because it's all quite self-contained, it's all really guided. You don't get control of the character for too long in each stage. I do notice that the movement is maybe a little bit slow, a little bit weird to get used to. We are talking about pre-dual analog 3D movement here. So like a lot of games released around this time, it's gonna be a little bit awkward to control. Voice acting wise, again, it's what you kind of expect from the time. It's not amazing, it's not what I'd call awful, it's just mid to late 90s anime style voice acting. Anyway, we wrap up the tutorial and it's time to delve into the first level and really see what the game is like. I get barely 10 seconds into the level and stuff absolutely kicks off. There are fire and explosions everywhere. We collect a few of the crystals and move forward, getting ready to fight fires and rescue our first person. Crystals in the game serve a few purposes. One is that they serve as your shield. Think Sonic's rings. 2 is that when you rescue someone, you have to spend 10 crystals to transport them away. And 3, they contribute to your score at the end of a level. First bloke rescued and we press on through the level itself. As you can probably see from the footage, I'm a little bit stop-start at times as I get used to how the thing controls. Still, I don't think it handles too badly and I never really get into any major trouble throughout the level itself. As you are progressing, fires will erupt around you or in a position you're in. Something I liked and something that you kind of have to get used to with the game is that there's a little audio cue to tell you when a fire is about to erupt. So when it reaches a certain point, if you press down on the D-pad at the right moment, your character does a neat little backflip away from the danger. I thought the timing was fairly generous here, so I never really felt I was ever going to mess it up, aside from when I wasn't listening or something else grabbed my attention. Along the way in the level, I also make good use of the navigation mechanic to ensure I was going the right way. The first level continues, you follow the directions, you collect your crystals, you fight the fires until you start to approach the end of the level. And then you start to hear these rumblings that something isn't quite right. Before long, you learn what that is and you're at the end of stage boss. This is an absolute massive plant lad, which you have to circle around and fight while avoiding the blue fire that it's spewing out at you. It's not especially difficult to beat the boss, although admittedly, I messed this up a couple of times. I forgot to jump over its attacks properly and got caught out. But a couple of charged blasts later and it is done. We're at the end of the level, a level that took me about 25 to 30 minutes to complete, and I got a D rank for. D for definitely room for improvement. So let's go on to the second level. So I know how to play the game a little bit more now, so let's improve upon that D rank and do a little bit better in terms of what I find and collect. This level is set in a sort of aquarium where things have gone awry, and it is the same concept as the first. You run through, collect crystals, fight fires. Two new gameplay concepts here though. There is a little bit of underwater traversal, which, being totally honest, I did not like. The navigation could be a little bit awkward in normal situations, but when you're swimming underwater, it felt even worse, especially with the fairly limited camera control that you, the player, has. The other thing introduced here is some very limited combat. Obviously, we got combat from the boss fight, and fighting the fires is maybe a form of combat in of itself. But there are a few situations here where you actually have to fight an enemy. The enemy comes in the form of these robots that are patrolling corridors. There's no actual sort of people to fight. They're not tough, and they're a little bit awkward because it's a moving target that is firing back at you, but a few charged blasts and the robots are history. Before long, we make it to the boss fight on this level, a big fish that swims underneath you while you are jumping between these floating platforms. It wasn't especially great. Again, the controls becoming an issue here because you're trying to jump and navigate this 3D space with the D-pad. It's not difficult, it's awkward, there is a rhythm to it, which I managed to get before long, and for my efforts, I got a B rank, which I was very happy with. And time to go on to the third level, which was more of the same, really. It builds upon what we did in levels 1 and 2, ups the difficulty a little bit, and we get a new enemy introduced, which is a sort of flying enemy, which could be annoying, but manageable. There's also a new type of hazard introduced to this level. Every now and then, the sides of this sort of space station we were on would blow out and pull us into space. I never really got the hang of how to avoid this hazard, so I did find myself losing my crystals a couple of times because of it. There are also a handful of moments here where I felt completely lost, with the navigation not really coming through for me as I had hoped. Still, nothing in the level that was unexpected. I expected the difficulty to increase a touch. I expected new hazards and new enemies, and nothing was done that made it feel like it was a sizable step up or in any way overwhelming. What I would say, I had more difficulty with the controls in this level than before. There are a few sections that I found tricky due to how the double jump is handled. If you tap jump and then tap it again, it does the double jump. But if you tap jump and then press a direction and then jump, it kind of launches you or boosts you forward. And I had a bit of difficulty getting the timing right here. I think it was purely a me thing, maybe just rushing things a little bit. It is very much, a deliberate action that you have to take. And there are a couple of issues with the camera positioning. I found it a little bit tricky to avoid some hazards coming at me while wrangling the camera, and relying on the game's somewhat basic auto aim caused me to lose health. One of the drawbacks of being a full 3D game in a pre-analog world. But perhaps maybe the hardest part of this level was towards the end of it, where you have to rescue this kid, but you're unable to just teleport him out. You have to carry him across a few thin beams and awkward jumps. If you take your time, it's not too bad, but everything around you is exploding and on fire, so you don't really feel like you have that opportunity to stop still and line yourself up. Then we get onto the boss. The boss here gave me the vibes of being a prototype boss from Sonic Adventure. You were set in this kind of tunnel, running around away from it, and then you had to take various opportunities to hit it when it had stopped. And yeah, fun, easy boss, really fun, really good to get through. And then we get to the fourth and final level. The fourth level being, well, it's a little bit of a departure. In this one, you are not fighting fires. Instead, you're locked into this fairly sizable platforming sequence, which is broken up by a couple of fiddly boss fights before making it to the final boss itself. It's a level that really tests your platforming skills. There's a lot of big jumps to make here. Some of them feel a little bit blind, some of them feel a little bit awkward, and there's a hell of a lot of pits to fall down in. Along the way, you get these little gimmicky boss fights, and there's a kind of vehicle section which I didn't really enjoy. But get to the final boss. It was a fairly tough little battle. Again, not helped by the controls and some of his attacks being a little bit hard to get around. But we get it beaten, and then game complete. So let's wrap up this little review. To complete all 4 levels of Burning Rangers, it took me about 3.5 to 4 hours. It's definitely a game that is here for a good time, but not a long time. Now, with that said, after beating a level, you do get ranked, and you can repeat the levels to find extra routes, rescue more people, and improve your rank. So there's some replay value to be had in terms of challenging yourself. And from my experience, I'd be more than happy to repeat the first 3 levels and improve my score and look for any hidden stuff. I would not be keen on repeating that 4th level though. And again, what we have here is a game that you can see in terms of the tech, it's pushed the Saturn to its limits. There's some visual jank here and there, but it generally looks lovely. Control-wise, you've heard all my complaints. It's a 3D action game before dual analog really became the standard for games, which means awkward cameras, awkward movement. The game I thought was generally quite competent, but I can see people having issues with it. There was quite a lot of action in the game, but you never need to be moving too quickly. You don't need the fastest reflexes. The dodge, being able to dodge, well, when you have to dodge, it's pretty well telegraphed, and it's just to push a D-pad down to flip you away. Maybe there's a bit of a learning curve, but the game is not asking for Tomb Raider style precision. You're not fighting waves of enemies. It's paced well enough for nothing to be too intrusive. Now, sound-wise, some absolute bangers on the soundtrack. During the levels, it's very quiet. All you really hear is the ambient noises of, if there's an enemy, if there's a fire, or the chatter from people coming through your headset. This is kind of a deliberate choice to absorb the player more, but I don't know, maybe I wouldn't have minded a little bit of low ambience to go along with the exploring. Just kind of something in the background to set a kind of atmosphere. But overall, I really enjoyed the core parts of the game. I really wish there was more of it. I wish I had more of a chance to visit this world than what it actually showed me. I wanted to do more as a Burning Ranger. I wanted to rescue people in different locations than the 3 I got, followed by this gimmicky boss fight. I can understand that maybe a game like this would eventually overstay its welcome if there were too many levels, but I don't think another 3 or 4 levels would really have hurt it that much. Just to bump it up to maybe a 6 or 7 hour game. Would I recommend playing this? Well, it's a hard one based on how much a copy of it would set someone back. Its rarity makes it a very pricey option. The short length I don't think justifies the asking price of, £200+ for it. But then I don't think much justifies a £200+ asking price for a video game. But Burning Rangers is still really bloody good, and I do think it's worth playing. It's an example of a really unique title, one that stands out and shows the potential of the Sega Saturn, and it's a damn shame that this game has never been revisited. I have never seen an example of it being re-released on a compilation. I have not seen it had a sequel. It doesn't seem to have had a port or any sort of remaster. It's one of those games that it happened and doesn't seem to have been seen again. A massive shame in my opinion, because what we have here is a game from Sonic Team during a kind of, interesting creative diversion for them. And we've had numerous re-releases of Nights into Dreams, which I would argue, I know people maybe see Nights as a more iconic character for various reasons, but I would say that is a weirder game and a quirkier game for people than what Burning Rangers is. I would actually say Burning Rangers is more accessible, so would probably be more prime for a re-release or something. So yeah, absolute shame that this has not been re-released in any form, and it is one that I would love to see get a revisit as some sort of poor or basic release. I do think people need to play this, and unfortunately, it's kind of inaccessible because of that silly asking price. And now I want to hear from you. Did you play this in the day, back in the day? Is it one that you want to give a go to now after this review? Please let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear your thoughts. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do leave me a like below. Please do subscribe to the channel for more retro gaming content. And until next time, thank you once again, and goodbye.